All right. All right. Well, my name is Margaret Baxter. I'm Executive Director at CADIA, and I'm really pleased to welcome you all to our August CADIA Connects. We're going to be talking about neurodiversity in the workplace, and specifically autism as one of those facets of neurodiversity. I did hit record. I made myself a note because I often forget. So that's all taken care of. And I just wanted to mention that we had a lot of people register for today's meeting. And I think it's because it's such an important topic. And when I think back through my career path and all the different people I came in contact with over all those years, and it's been decades, we didn't talk too much about neurodiversity and the special gifts that people bring to the workplace. And I'm just glad now that we can talk about it and we can find a way of addressing some of the differences between the way that we all work. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started, and then I'm going to turn things over to Lisa D'Amour. Lisa, if you have not met her yet, is the newest member of CADIA's staff. She is Vice President of DEI, joined us back in May, and we are really, really thrilled to have her. So let me just get started with a couple of slides for some announcements. First announcement, we have an invitation to audit an upcoming meeting. If you are a DEI professional in the automotive or transportation industry, we have a monthly roundtable meeting. It's a forum for professionals to share best practices and
seems like Margaret froze, or is that me? Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Cheryl Thompson. So what Margaret was saying is we have this. Oh, you froze, Margaret, so I jumped in.
Oh. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. So what Margaret? Go ahead, Margaret. Go ahead.
I don't know where we were. I was just introducing people to the roundtable.
Talking about it's a monthly forum to share best practices and lessons learned, and then you froze, and I wasn't sure if it was me.
All right. Well, thanks for taking over. The QR code will take you to a forum where you can request a guest invitation to audit a meeting and see if it might be something of interest for your organization. And next, I just want to mention our Arcadia DEI certification program. This is a 12-week certification program. We have 2 different cohorts kicking off this fall. We're really excited to be introducing some new curriculum with a new focus on global DEI. And we are holding this meeting today. We're holding some space about 10 to 15 minutes after Arcadia Connects ends. If anybody would like more information on this program, we've already graduated more than 100 individuals. Great reviews. It's been such a pleasure for us to run these different cohorts, and I think you would find it really, really amazing. We have people of all different kinds who join. Most are from the transportation industry, not all. Most have some specific role in DEI. Some are simply members of an ERG and want to learn more. So it's an intensive program. It's a great way to meet other DEI professionals and create that network in our industry. So more to come on that as well. And then next, I'm going to turn things over to Lisa to get us kicked off on today's conversation.
Thank you, Margaret, and welcome. It's nice to see so many familiar names on the screen, and maybe when we're done with this, we'll have an opportunity to see some faces as well. So we're going to talk about neurodiversity today, and just wanted to come up with a couple of definitions for us to keep in the back of our minds. Neurodiversity is tossed around as in multiple different ways, but by definition, it's the actual range of human brains and minds, right? So neurodivergence is what happens when the brain varies, the brain function varies outside what society calls the norm or considers the norm, when it's different from standards. And then neurotypical describes brains that meet those societal standards or norms. So that's the only thing I wanted to bring up there, is a couple of different terms that may come into play during the session today. And we will go ahead and we're going to introduce some folks, a couple of folks that are going to talk to us about defining and discussing neurodiversity, helping us learn how to drive inclusive cultures, and some resources for learning more and really moving forward in this area. So I am going to ask Dennis Lauterbach from CAI to start the introductions for himself, and then he's going to turn it over to Anthony Facilio.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lisa. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for your time today. Well, we're excited to be here. Just a couple of things. So I've been with CAI. CAI is an IT technology company. We've been in business since 1981. I've been with our organization for about 27 years, and I'm based in Michigan. So work with a lot of clients and organizations in this area. But today we wanted to talk to you about our neurodiversity program, but just a real quick backdrop. We started this program about 10 years ago, and back then we called it Autism to Work, or A2W. And today, about a year and a half ago, we actually changed the name to Neurodiverse Solutions, so we can hire folks not only that were on the spectrum, but also ADHD, PTSD, high anxiety disorders, and that opened up opportunities for others that have a challenge or a disability. And the whole premise about the program is really changing lives and creating opportunities for folks that are neurodiverse. Hence, we call it neurodiversity in the workplace. And when you look at it, it really helps bridge the connection between DEI and goals, business needs, and sourcing solutions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Vice President and of our Neurodiverse Solutions, Anthony Pacilio. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks everybody for being here as well. My name is Anthony Pacilio, Vice President of CADIA Neurodiverse Solutions, as Dennis just mentioned. Little bit about myself. I am neurodivergent, so neurodivergent is the other term that you'll hear probably a lot today. So I have extreme social anxiety disorder, I have depression, but I'm also CAI Neurodiverse Solutions brand and media ambassador. And Dennis has heard me say it 1,000 times. They always give the guy who has a high anxiety disorder the radio, the podcast, the television. So it's an awesome job. It's a fun job, but hopefully it's highly relatable today. The other piece of my job is I help companies build the infrastructure to start neurodiversity at work programs. In previous to this job, I've been in this job a couple of years. I was the global head of JP Morgan Chase's Autism at Work program for a number of years. I helped Microsoft and SAP and DXC start the Neurodiversity at Work Employers Roundtable, which is highly successful. But I'm excited to kind of give you my journey and what I've gone through to get to where I am today. There's a lot of pieces to unpack, and everybody typically knows somebody who is neurodivergent, right? So we mentioned social anxiety disorders and depression, but dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all the disses, as I say. So hopefully you gain something out of this today. I love to hear feedback. So you guys can all email me or text me or LinkedIn me when we're done. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have as well. So Lisa, I'm gonna give it over to you real quick.
Alrighty, well, you led into it absolutely perfectly. We have just a 3-question poll. If you can't see the third question, please scroll down to it. But we want to find out a little bit more about everybody who's here and why we're here today, what we're interested in, that sort of thing. So there's 3 quick questions. We'll leave it open for a hot minute. If everybody would take an opportunity to answer, that'd be great.
Isn't this the coolest thing? Like you can just watch it go.
This is really wild watching it.
So
we can get to 75% participation and then we can cut it off.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll see how close we can get. Look at that. We're flying past 75 now. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Lisa, just let me know when you want me to close it. I think it's slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, let's go ahead and close it. Not that we aren't concerned about the rest of you, but we will. This will give us a chance to start some of the conversation and to really, to help us focus what Anthony and Dennis are going to talk about today. So you led into it really nicely, Dennis, in that we may or may not know whether or not we have people working with us, whether people self-disclose, how they identify, all sorts of interesting information. But can you talk just a little bit about the terminology? Because while we're looking at the results of the poll, I know I've heard people say neurodivergent with regard to people. I know I've heard neurodiverse with regards to people, neurotypical, neuroatypical.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the breakdown there and, maybe how that has to do with your coming of age
Sure.
into the neurodivergent population?
Yeah, I'm gonna steal this one from Dennis here. So listen, terminology is always changing. So, we've gone through kind of the gamut. So neurodivergent is speaking about an individual. Neurodiversity is kind of the community or the population. Neurotypical is those who are not neurodivergent or don't associate with any of the neurodiversities that we mentioned, right? ADHD, ADD, all of that. There is a new term coming as well, a neuroinclusion, and that is a community that's inclusive of everyone. And typically that can be used in the workplace, events, right? So this is a neuroinclusive event. So welcoming the community into whatever that space may be. It's funny that you mentioned all the terminology. We go through and we talk about different things and different terminologies that come into play and the messaging around those. And some terms stick and some terms don't. I think people associate, they want to be called autistic or, I have autism, and it's different for everybody. It's your own journey. And as we go through our journeys in life, mine's a little different than Dennis's, who's different than yours, Lisa. And I think what we need to understand about neurodiversity in the workplace and why it's becoming what it is currently is because that typically hasn't had a seat at the table until recent. It's been in the past 5 to 7 years that it's been on everybody's DEI radar, which is great. But honestly, if I'm looking at the 106 people here today, and it keeps growing, which is awesome, like I shouldn't have this job. I need a job, right? I have a mortgage, I have kids, all that good stuff. I need to eat, but I shouldn't have this job. This should be built into the DNA of every company's hiring practices. And that's why, traditional interviews don't kind of stick well. Different, panel interviews don't work so well. Asking the where do you see yourself in 5 years question doesn't stick well. Looking for the firm handshake or somebody looking you in the eyeballs, maybe they're not going to look you in the eyeballs, but it doesn't mean that they don't have the skill and the aptitude to do the job. So just 2 minutes of my journey. I always knew I was a little quirky growing up, and some of you may know somebody who's a little quirky as well. But if I had the resources like people have today, the trajectory of my career, my life may have been a little different, may not have led me to where and what I'm doing today, but it would have been potentially a little bit easier for me. My parents didn't understand what neurodiversity was way back in the 70s, right? So I'm 50 years old and I didn't disclose until a few years ago. But going through life, being bullied, having different things occur throughout my childhood and some of my adulthood makes me who I am. But all the people sitting, it's when you're looking at Zoom, sometimes it's like the Brady Bunch, so you can see everybody. People to the left and to the right of you on the screen, you don't know who they are internally, right? You don't know the struggles that they're going through. And Dennis knows this a few years back, which really kind of triggered how and why I do this today is, I had an incident occur in my life, obviously not a flattering one. And, I lost my wife, I lost my kids, all of that good stuff. And it was because of my anxiety and my depression. And I didn't deal with it well then. But what I did have, though, before I got to CAI, is I had support. I had support at work. I had EAP programs. I had ERGs and BRGs, and we'll talk about some of those as well. But those support mechanisms were kind of the catalyst to get me through that time. And I was lucky enough to secure what I do today and talk about my trials and tribulations, but also to inform all of you that there is a community out there, a population of neurodivergent individuals who are struggling to find employment opportunities. And we're trying to bridge that gap. I mean, we have a great model that works, of course, and I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I am telling you there is some wonderful individuals that have the skills to do the job. We're just not affording them the opportunity to do that work. So I'm going to stop there, Lisa. It was a really long answer. I could talk for hours on this topic, but I just want to make sure you get through some of your questions too.
I can guarantee you that we were going to end this with the feeling that we needed another hour. But I appreciate that. And if we look at the poll results, we can see that, half of the people don't have neurodivergent individuals in their workplace. Well over half don't have any neurodivergent or mental health ERGs. And most of the people don't know that their company doesn't have any targeted program to address that population of potential employees or existing employees, right? So I think it's most appropriate that we're going to be talking about how we can drive those inclusive cultures and what tools can we take away so that we learn enough to be able to be effective. So I want to talk for just a second. People talk about neurodivergence and neurodivergent individuals. And there's always this presumption that there's a diagnosis that goes along with it, right? That you have this or you are this. And I'm curious if one or both of you would like to talk a little bit about the intersectionality that exists between neurodivergence and mental health, because they're not exactly the same, right? So
Right.
I don't know who wants to take that one on first?
Anthony's good at this.
Yeah. So
Way to delegate, Dennis. Okay.
Yeah, he's good. He's very good at that.
Yeah.
So they aren't one and the same, but one, it's not a trigger, but it can lead up to, right? So in my situation, my journey, having depression and anxiety disorder led to the mental health challenge that I experienced a few years ago, right? But they don't necessarily need to be comorbid, right? It's a terrible word, but typically folks who are neurodivergent have multiple conditions, whether they have ADHD and depression, or they have PTSD and depression. Like, a lot of those things go together. So there is an intersectionality of putting those all together under one umbrella. I would be remiss to say that mental health over the past 3 to 4 years, especially with people who are on the spectrum, meaning autism, and other neurodivergent conditions, that has grown in its capacity over the past 3 or 4 years, and not in a good way, right? We're finding more and more individuals are struggling to get through the workday, whether they work remotely or they're hybrid or they're on site. It's all different. So I think what we need to do is address where can those individuals go as an outlet, right? And we could talk what kind of I was nervous about is, like, half the people, I think you said, didn't know or have an ERG or BRG within their workplace. Was that the statistic, Lisa? I think that was the statistic.
59% said there's no special programs or ERGs to support neurodivergent individuals. Yeah.
Gotcha. So and I'm not saying from that perspective that you need a special program or anything like that. You may want to label it as something different. You don't have to use disability in there, but, all encompassing, inclusive, whatever it may be, because that's going to actually bring in neurodivergent individuals, but it might bring in sight impaired, hearing impaired, physical disabilities. Like, all of those kind of can go together, but I think it builds a stronger foundation because you're going to get different perspectives. then the intersectionality that you were talking about, Lisa, really comes into play. So I think being able to develop it, whether it's a top down from your CEO or president or whoever is leading your particular business, or a grassroots effort, you need to take the bull by the horns if you can get that gumption to get it done and start a program. Those things are going to open up the doors, and they lead to a number of things like self-disclosure, which is a huge topic, right? A lot of folks are afraid to come out and say that I'm on the spectrum because they feel that it'll impact their ability to be promoted, or people will think differently of them. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me personally, it's especially when I was at JP Morgan Chase, and be like, I'm not coming out, my manager doesn't understand. Well, then it's incumbent upon us to educate, to build support, to build that framework and infrastructure to support those individuals. And listen, this is all universal design, right? So when you build things like this, it just doesn't help that specific group of people, it helps everybody in your organization. And then there's going to be potentially, and hopefully, a culture shift. And that culture shift builds empathy. And with that, a lot of great things come out of it. And again, I could talk about 6 years about this topic. So,
Well, we have a few minutes left, but we won't take 6 years probably. You used the term coming out, and I have to say that it's almost like a different population. The lesbian and gay community, LGBTQ, used that term for a long time, and it's interesting to hear it used with regard to a different group of people. And it makes me think that there's that common framework that can exist, that can be created to integrate everybody, all members of marginalized groups or underrepresented groups. But enough about that. Dennis, you were nodding seriously while Anthony was talking about that. You want to talk a little bit about some of the frameworks that people and support structures that Anthony was alluding to?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, well, when he was talking about it, and I saw Mark Friends in the chat asked about, hey, I'm an engineer, I work with a lot of people, but they don't self-disclose. Pre-COVID, we were all on site. All the individuals that we were hiring was on site at our client, and back to help bringing the culture together. When people found out about it, that we had a team of resources that were autistic in IT or in business operations, people would actually come over to that team and feel part of that culture, right? And they would actually self-disclose that, hey, I'm on the spectrum as well. So talk about empathy, as Anthony mentioned, is big. And then when we shifted off-site back because of COVID, now when we're working with organizations, we do I'll call it profile cards on each of our individuals. A lot of our clients do internal messaging on their intranet site, and hey, we have a group of resources that are neurodiverse, and this is what they're doing. And it brings, their weekly newsletters or monthly newsletters. So there's a lot of publicity about going about it. So it's been really good. In terms of the support within our organization, again, not selling here, but just sharing information. We have coaches, we have mentors, we have certified team leaders that work with our folks to make sure that everything is going well. We have a whole talent acquisition team behind our program as well. Anthony, I don't know if you want to add to that.
no, but I'm reading some of the comments that come in here, and you guys, they're cracking me up. Like, is it the right stand or the wrong stand? Hilarious. So maybe I have ADHD as well, because I'm like squirrel. But to Dennis's point, so the support mechanisms, and I think bringing in acceptance training, right? Neurodiversity acceptance training to the organization, filling the gap that may exist in an organization about what exactly are we talking about. There's 108 people going, I take that back. There's 108 people, and some of them are probably parents, some of them are probably caregivers or guardians, and they have a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew who is neurodivergent. And a lot of the times what we hear is, if we don't start programs like this and have the support built in, what is when I'm gone, what is my son or daughter, niece or nephew? What happens to them? And if we are not providing employment opportunities for long-term, meaningful, rewarding careers with benefits and all the other good stuff, what are we doing? If you can provide an opportunity to do that, there's a lot of things that come out of that too, Lisa. That's confidence from that individual. It might be newfound responsibility. It might be that he or she or they is getting their first apartment somewhere, living outside of their family home, or they're getting their driver's license for the first time. And I know Dennis has heard the story about the young lady who I worked with, who I helped her get her driver's license. She never thought she would do that. But then it's the phone calls back from those parents, guardians, and caregivers that are emotional, or like, you can't see the change in the individual unless you're there every single day, understanding what they went through in the past to get to where they are today. So, yeah,
I think you've hit on something that, reinforces why we need the structures in the first place, right? Yeah. Is sometimes people, and I'll use the example of a student because Shannon just talked about her son going off to college. We have IEPs to help kids in school. They get through high school, and that may or may not transfer to the college level. And I have an ex-coworker whose daughter failed a program because she wasn't prepared or educated to advocate for herself. So imagine taking that same neurodivergent or neurodiverse individual and putting them into the workplace now, where they weren't comfortable advocating for themselves in college, and there's no structure and no support built into the workplace. Right. And they haven't learned that self-advocacy and how that could just perpetuate and create that system where you may come in, you may get a job, but where's your promotional track? You said career, and I think that's important to remember. We're not just looking to get people jobs. We're not just wanting to help people get a job. We want them to have a career. Yeah. So I'm looking to see, please go ahead.
So I saw a comment come in about universities, colleges, and if I could take a moment to just talk about that. And before the session, we were all talking about from grammar school, that dates me, right? I'm old. So from elementary school all the way through college, what's the shift been? What's it been like? For some individuals, it's been a typical experience, right? So some IEPs, 504s. What we're not doing enough of is figuring out along the way that advocacy piece for one, but making the onus also come back on, the schools, their psychologists, psychiatrists, all of that, because what happens is I get a diagnosis that's great. I'm going through this now with a family member, and it's just like passing them through. And I've sat on these pieces during the elementary school and now the high school, where they're like, yeah, these are the services that we can offer, but they're not enough services. And when you get to the cliff at 18 and you don't know what you're going to do, either you might go to college or you might not. What is after that? And let's talk about college in general. Some colleges do it well. We have like an MOU with Marshall University, who has an unbelievable autism program. There's schools like Beacon College and Landmark College, who we have MOUs with, but they are fully neurodivergent adults that go to those schools. 400 to 500 students, all neurodivergent, all different autism, ADHD, go through exactly what I said earlier. Those folks know how to support those individuals. Now, we don't have enough of those colleges and universities that have either a disability program or they might have a small one, but that intersects with their career office. Typically, those two don't flow together. And it's part of my job and Dennis's job outside of what we do for our clients to build those relationships. So, I'm headed to Penn State to look at their program next week. So there's a lot going on, but not enough. And it can sometimes be a daunting challenge for parents sending their son, daughter off to college for the first time, in hoping that they can acclimate, that they can go to class and use their executive function skills. And executive function skills are like time management. There's a lot of other things go into executive management, or executive function, but time management being one thing, how they work individually and collaboratively with their student peers and population. So we need to do a more robust job. And I take that upon myself to be the person who will try his best to get that done. So that when you get out of college, if you graduate college, you don't necessarily need, don't take this the wrong way, everybody who's got a degree, but you don't necessarily need a degree to get a job anymore. We have 18-year-olds coming out with certificates with Java and Microsoft that can code sometimes better than people who've been there for 10 years, and maybe they're self-taught. So we don't obviously discriminate on.
Oh, I think you froze.
And there's a lot of things that we can upskill along the way, right?
Yeah.
Management, a whole bunch of other things as well. So I'll stop there, Lisa.
The other school that you didn't mention, which I don't know if you want to mention with all the Michigan people that might be on this, is the Ohio State University. Has a great program as well.
They do. So the Ohio State,
Ohio State, capital T.
guys are killing me with the. So I'm from Syracuse. Don't take it out on me. But they do have a wonderful program, and was in Columbus with JP Morgan Chase. We had a great relationship. We took interns from that program and put them to work during the summers and flipped those into jobs when they graduated. It honestly, yay Syracuse, Aaron Hines. It honestly just takes one person at your organization to make a difference. And if I can help one person today go back and say, hey, listen, we need to look into this, or are we doing this, or what do we have set up? My job's been done. I can go home.
Yeah.
Not really.
The other thing is, we're not only trying to change an individual's life, we're changing a family life. Like I'll share with you that you can share with the audience. It's like a 4 to 5 minute video of an individual who was working at a grocery store. Now, he heard about the program. Now he's working at one of our clients, and it's changed his life completely. They interview his sister, his mother, our client, himself, and it's very powerful and very impactful. And that really summarizes of what we do in trying to change the culture and trying to change this whole community of neurodiverse. Because, we mentioned it briefly in the beginning, 80 to 85% of the folks that are on the spectrum are underemployed or unemployed, and it's an untapped market. And people, like, what we try to do is really change the entire traditional interview process, and we do it in a number of different ways. So there you go.
I like that. In the process of that, you're changing the employment opportunities for businesses, right? You're changing the productivity and what they can expect as outcomes. You're changing it for the individual. And there was a mention in the chat about family disclosure. So you're impacting families as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Positive light. Now, I know me, and I'm going to say, all right, spend some time and give us some actual tools that we can use as individuals within a company, or we can ask for. How can we go about starting to build that neuro-inclusive environment that we want to have? That's come up a couple of different times. Can you give us something to put in our tool belt? Give us an extra, not a hammer probably, but maybe a screwdriver to use here.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is you have us as a resource. And again, not trying to sell you anything. You can call me offline and we can talk about building that support and infrastructure for a neuro-inclusive workplace and workforce. There's a lot of different entities that we can go in. It's whether or not you're talking to an HR person, or it's really a connection point, but it's also showing that how we do it is very strategic to start, right? To build a neuro-inclusive workplace, you may, listen, we already know that everybody, all workplaces have neurodivergent individuals to the left and to the right. It's just there that you just don't know. But to build that framework to get people to understand and embrace the culture is a little bit more challenging. Sometimes it does take a neurodiversity in the workplace type program to start to bubble what we already know about the great return on investment, not from a profitability standpoint, which it is, great productivity, attention to detail, all those things that go into folks who are neurodivergent, but also for that person themselves. If you can build just a small pilot to get started in whatever, Lisa, we talked about like IT or back office operations or audit, whatever it may be. This is how you start to build the momentum. This is how you start to let people see and show the talent that they've been missing all of those years. So the tool belt is all the things I just described. It's maybe getting a partner who's been doing it for a while to help you navigate through the obstacles that is typically can be onboarding, HR, all those other things, learning and development, all those things that you have.
I love the idea of piloting it. Take an area where you already have somebody who has an appreciation for the positive outcomes associated with having a neurodiverse department or functional area and piloting a program there. Because I know that one of the things that always comes up when we talk about anything DEI is managers and leaders don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to do the wrong thing, right? So if you wouldn't mind talking just a little bit about that apprehension and how you can take an individual or a pilot program and really grow that throughout an organization.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we're trying inadvertently, people think that there's a risk of hiring somebody who thinks a bit differently, even though, again, we have them in the workplace. But it may be the way that they go about finding that innovation and supplying that solution. So the risk is, well, geez, if I hire somebody who's on the spectrum and then they have a stimming incident, what is it going to look like when people react? Well, listen, that is part of life and being a human being, and we all should be human beings and be empathetic and try to understand each other. But what we do is when we bring in those individuals, we kind of de-risk that. We're finding the candidates, we're assessing cognitive and behaviorally the candidates. We're putting them through what we call a talent discovery session and see how they work, a day in the life of whatever that job may be. But the most critical piece is we have what we call a team lead that is with those individuals. And typically we start 3 to 5, 4 to 6, but we do that. We don't do the onesie twosie. We do the team because there's camaraderie. There's a tribe mentality that goes along with that. What we're doing with that team lead is they're the mentor, the coach, they're the subject matter expert, they're certified, they're neurodiverse certified, but they're also working with your management team side by side to understand what accommodations maybe Sally or Michael or Jeff needs. We're providing you metrics on the productivity. We're providing you how Sally, Jeff, or Tom likes their feedback. Do they like it via Zoom? Do they like it in person? Do they want it over the phone? Do they want it via email? Like, those are the things that we're taking out so that the anxiety on both sides, the associates that are now working for you and your management or associates as well, or your employees, they feel comfortable doing that. And they feel comfortable with that conduit of that team lead in between. Really, the goal of this, they're working with us and you for a short time, and then we want you to hire them full-time. But we don't want them to be our employees. We want them to be your employees. But we need to build that infrastructure again, and the support mechanisms and your own internal mentors and coaches from a degree. Obviously, we have experience in doing that, but we need to educate, train, build the acceptance, all of that. And having one small team kind of ripples into different areas within as people start to hear and understand and go, yes, why weren't we doing this in the first place?
Yeah, and Rhiannon said she loves this question. How do you get leaders more engaged or understanding if they're not familiar? Like, I'm not sure how many people on the call, maybe a show of hands, how many people understand what stimming incident means? I'm just curious,
Yeah.
but if you want to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so a couple things. So I talked about stimming, and my apologies for not clarifying what that exactly is. Some of you may or may not know, but sometimes a stimming incident can be like people who flap, or they might have Tourette's associated with another comorbid condition, and it's something that becomes uncontrollable due to anxiety or other kind of environmental factors that are happening. And what do you do in that situation? Well, the team lead is there. They'll obviously understand that maybe we need to go to a different room and kind of settle down, talk about it. There's a lot of ways to kind of de-escalate whatever that is, but also it's normal, right? People deal with anxiety in different ways. So that is just one mechanism. So that is stimming, and it can be a multitude of different things that go on. I think the other part of that question was getting senior leadership involved, right? Was that it?
Yes, how do you get leadership and more managers on board when they're not familiar with and they may not have a family or a friend or a previous coworker. They may just not have that exposure or that education.
Yeah, so it all starts with all 108 of you that joined today, right? It doesn't need to necessarily be a CHRO or a CEO or a CFO to get it moving. It does sometimes come from, an associate or, like 5 levels down, but it's to begin the conversation. And if you have an ERG or a BRG, there is also a champion typically of that, or a sponsor of that. And it's bringing it to that sponsor to say, hey, listen, are we doing this? What are we doing? What's the space like? It's ask questions, it's probe. And it's also from, having people like myself come to an ERG and talk about what it's like to build a program or a town hall or a team meeting. I don't care. It could be 3 people or it could be 108 people. I will talk about this as vigorously as I can every single time. I'm animated. I'm Italian. That just happens and it shows through. I get it. But I'm like this every day because I see the opportunity for people to be engaged. And I don't care if you're a CEO or you just started yesterday in the mailroom. There's no difference to me. I'm going to talk to you the exact same way about why you should do this program. And then we will figure out together how to bubble it up if they don't know about it.
Boy, we are a dangerous combination, Anthony. I'm having to sit on my hands sometimes so that I don't look more Italian than I already do.
And that makes 3 of us, even have a German last name.
Well, all right, then we're gonna have pasta after this. Everybody else can go back to work. We're gonna go have pasta. So we've talked a lot about having the structure in place. Once you have the employees and you recognize that your employees exist, right? Which we do. We're everywhere, right? But let's go back to the talent part of it. How do we open up and start to recruit? Open up the pipeline to make sure these folks are getting into the funnel. What do we have to do from that perspective? Changing hiring and recruiting practices. I know, Anthony, you and I have talked about verbiage in job descriptions being exclusionary instead of inclusive. I'm going to give you both the opportunity to talk about how we get more people into the organizations.
Yeah, Dennis, you want me to take that one? I got it. If you
Go ahead. Yeah.
So let's talk about job descriptions. It's one of my favorite topics, right? So a lot of companies have the archaic, you need strong communication skills and written and verbal communication skills. Not everybody has that. You need to assess if that is a necessary piece to this job. A lot of the times what we're seeing is, you need 3 years of basket weaving 101, right? Well, who has that for one? And is it really relevant to the job? What happens is typically neurodivergent people are very literal in the sense, and more so when they're looking at a job application. And if there's one, copy paste requirements, Alan.
Yeah, there you go, Alan.
It's been happening for years. We don't want that anymore. What happens is people opt themselves out because, oh my God, I needed 3 years of that. Well, if you go back to the job rec, did you really need 3 years of it? Some jobs you may, I get it. I get it. But there's other jobs, mostly entry level, that you're still requiring 2 years of X, Y, and Z. Well, if I'm going to be, let's say, a cybersecurity expert, and I'm looking at pattern recognition, I'm looking for bad actors, the only thing I probably have a visual aid to go through, and I need to be able to write the bad actors down, whatever it is. You can make a visual aid for this. You write it down, type it in, whatever, and then you're done. You don't need that verbal and communication skills to be excellent and all of that. It just wasn't necessary for that job. You're taking an awesome candidate who could do that job and just letting them go. And the other thing, and it's a statistic, and it's terrible to say, typically female population opts themselves out of more jobs than males do. And it's tragic that we even have to talk about this in respect, but it's a fact currently, unfortunately. But all of you have the opportunity to change this. And let's talk about interviewing, right? No more panel interviews, no more hour after hour after hour interview, right? 4 in a day. Half-hour interviews are typically the best, 20 to 30 minutes. The next piece of that is 2 to 3 is probably a tops. And if you have to do more than that, please don't take this the wrong way. A lot of companies still do this. If you have to do more than that, you don't have the right hiring managers in the job to make the decision, or you're not empowering them to make a decision based on the skills and aptitude. We also have to teach the hiring managers that, again, as we talked about it earlier, not everybody's going to look you in the eyeball. Not everybody's going to respond like that. So if somebody has delayed processing, you've asked them a question and they're looking up here, it is not because they do not know the answer. They are processing the answer. You need to give that person a little space and time and then let them answer. If after an elongated period, and listen, I'm talking 45 seconds or so, maybe you need to rephrase the question. That's it. But allow that person the time to process and spit the answer out to you. So, I mean, those are just like 2 or 3 things during the interview process. Everything else and everything that we're talking about here could be applied to absolutely everyone at your organizations. So, Lisa, I'll stop here.
So you're talking about, you're describing changes in recruiting and hiring practices that can be taken and implemented. And really, if anybody on the call is a hiring manager, it's something that they can implement immediately without necessarily having to change systems and policies, but that would be the ideal approach, right?
Yeah.
Just at a 30,000 foot level, we have partnerships with over 500 or affiliates organizations across the country, and Anthony already mentioned some of them from the universities. Actually, locally, Anthony and I are on the board of Living and Learning Academy in Northville, Novi, Michigan. If anyone's familiar with the area or or heard of Living and Learning Academy, they have a whole area around IT Excellence Academy that we sit on the board. But when it comes to bringing people and hiring folks that are neurodiverse, everyone knows someone that's either neurodiverse or on the spectrum, and they hear about it, and then we get the individual's resume and we give them their talent acquisition team. And then we actually go through what we call a talent discovery session with them. And it's anywhere from 30 to 40 hours, and really assessing their behavioral skills, their cognitive skills, and looking for opportunities for them. Right now, I mean, it's been focused a lot in IT just because of the way they think, they visualize, they process information. But now a lot of organizations are looking at, in the business operations area, financial analysts, mortgage processing, claims processing. So, but we get referrals all the time.
Yeah, the candidate pipeline is obviously grown since remote has come into existence in a more robust form. But
Yep.
really, we're doing an assessment on the individual that will ensure that they are successful. We're a person-first organization. So if we have a client, Lisa, and we're going through all of this process, we're making sure more that it's a right fit for the candidate than it is for the client. And I'll tell you why that is. We obviously want them to be successful. And if they're successful, they're going to be successful at that company. Now, the flip side of this, everything's not always rosy. Some candidates just don't work out. They go and they find maybe it's not what they expected, right? You know, they're working 40 hours a week. Maybe that's not the gist for them. But that also happens to neurotypical people too. So what happens is, well, we started a neurodiversity work program, but you know, Bobby, it just wasn't a good fit. People then think, you know, oh, well, you know, we tried it, we're done, we're not going to do it anymore. You know, and that is not the way to go. Don't be soured on starting something, because there's also growing pains that go along with it. We pretty much minimize all those growing pains for you initially, but we are going to make sure that you're set up for success as well.
So we're running down to the last couple of minutes here, and I wanted to just ask, we don't want this to be a one and done kind of thing. We don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel all the time. How do companies, and you mentioned risk reduction earlier and risk versus reward, interesting concept when it comes to this, but how do companies go about making sure that they're doing this effectively? That we don't want them to just say, yep, we're there, we've got neurodivergent people in our organization, we did our job. How do we make sure that we're going forward and keeping this, you know, top of mind and really advancing this in an ongoing basis?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. When you're starting a program like this, one of the questions that we ask up front is there a pathway within this job, right? So if you're going to be a QA tester 1, is there 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Career mobility. If you tell me that there is, I know you're serious about starting a program because you want people to advance if they want. A lot of folks, you know, will stay as a tester 1 because that's what they like to do. But there's a large population of folks that want to be able to have career mobility. So I know sustainability is a huge factor, and retention is a huge factor. The success of this is because about 90% of the individuals who come in stay. So I don't know many companies that have a 90+ retention rate within the first 12 months. But we do, because we're assessing those candidates. And what that does is it breeds success, it breeds return on investment, which is profitability, there's a lot of different things that go into that. But we also need, the success of the program is, a lot of you have intranet sites, right? This is where you start to publicly acknowledge that you're doing a program, that it's working, you know, and a lot of people have seen or read what it's like to have a program and the success that it has, and it says, hey, maybe I can do this as well. So I think from a success factor and kind of sustainability factor, I think it's getting a program in place, making sure that you've done your due diligence, you've gone through whatever growing pains, you've made all the strides and support mechanisms, and then it's starting to roll out to other divisions, departments, whatnot. That will be the true test of success. And I hope that your ERGs and BRGs start to blossom and grow. Like there's little things that come about of this. And what you'll also see is when you do programs like this, people will start to say that, or self-disclose that, you know, hey, I'm ADHD. I'm excited that there's a program like this, and you know, how can I help? There was one question, Lisa, that was talking about neurodivergent individuals leading neurodivergent individuals. Yes, that is what has to happen. And it happens, you probably don't know, but I think it's when you do programs like this and a person is successful and they want to be a mentor or a coach, I think you need to be able to elevate that person, right? Understand who they are and be able to say, yeah, now you are going to lead. If they want to lead, let them lead, right? Neurodivergent to neurodivergent, I'm in. It's just the way the world is. It's finding your tribe.
I love it. And I knew we were going to run out of time, but I want to give you just a second. Dennis, maybe talk about the NDCC. Every time I Google neurodiversity, the neurodiversity career connector came up. Can you talk a little bit about that in closing?
Yeah, that's just one of our partners that we use from a training perspective that we have to go through from a certification standpoint. In fact,
Well, actually, Dennis, that's the IBCCES. So the NDCC.
Oh, okay, I missed that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Neurodiverse Career Connector is kind of a conglomeration of Microsoft and some other folks who built a site for job postings for neurodiverse friendly employers, right? So they're posting, if the employer is posting a job up there, you know that they've gone through the neurodiversity at work roundtable, you know, they've gone through disability in, and folks who are looking for an opportunity can go there, download the resume, there's help, there's a concierge service. You just know that those employers are ready, willing, and able and supportive. They're not there if they can't support you and provide an opportunity.
Wow. So this has been absolutely amazing. The chat has been popping, I have to say. And what I'd like to say is that if anybody wants to reach out to Anthony or Dennis or both, I believe that they have many more resources that are available. We will be sending out a deck with some information about CAI following the session today. And if you're interested at all in the accelerator program, hang on for 10 minutes afterwards. But gentlemen, I want to thank you both for being here and spending the time with us. As somebody who has been formally diagnosed as neurodivergent, I appreciate the input and the information, and I can tell from the chat that y'all really struck a chord with the audience today. And I'm looking forward to Neurodiversity 202 or 102, whatever we can connect on next.
Thank you. I did put in the chat, I know it was a little late, that video, but I could resend it to you so everyone can get it.
Yeah, we can probably get a link to that into the presentation that we're going to send as well.
Awesome.
Yep.
And thank you to everybody out there for all the comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Suggestions. 99 comments, suggestions, thanks is awesome.
Yeah.
Huge. Thank you both. Thank you so much. And I will stay on to talk about the accelerator program. Anthony, Dennis, you're welcome to come to the accelerator program chat if you'd like. Otherwise, I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Anthony.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Bye.
All right, Lisa, I have your slides ready. Whenever you're ready, we'll give people a minute to either.
We'll stay on or drop off, whichever they prefer.
Exactly.
Okay, somebody said neurospicy. Who said that?
That
Oh, I
was
love that.
that
Oh
was
my
Jen from Adient.
I love that
That
term.
was amazing.
Yeah, I heard it on TikTok and I've been using it for my kid.
Neurospicy. I also love the neuroinclusive. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of different
Yeah.
things. But... Okay, it looks like we've settled in at about 31 people. And I definitely.
Hey, Lisa, do we
Yes.
want to stop the recording for CADIA Connects?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Margaret, can you do that?
I can.
We were so excited that we remembered to hit the record button. And by we, I mean Margaret.